Your son wants you dead. That was the first thing I heard, clear, sharp, and cold as a blade, while a pair of gloved hands tightened straps across my wrists. If you're watching this video, do me a favor, hit like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you first heard my revenge story. I need to know how far the truth has traveled and how many people understand what really happened to me. My name is Sean Walker. I'm 60 years old, and 3 months ago I woke up on an operating table I never agreed to lie on. The ceiling above me wasn't the beige paint of my bedroom. It was surgical white, glaring down like an interrogation lamp. To my left, a heart monitor beeped steadily, too steadily, like someone had adjusted it, like someone wanted to make sure no one noticed the sedation dripping into my veins. The air smelled of antiseptic and something metallic. Sterile cold. Wrong. Another beeping sound to my right. An IV pump pushed tiny streams of clear fluid into my arm. And then came the whisper. Soft, urgent, terrified. Your son wants you dead, a nurse, young. Brown eyes wide like she'd just stepped into a nightmare she couldn't walk back out of. Her ID badge read, Mauricia S. I blinked at her, my tongue thick as stone. What? What did you say? She looked over her shoulder, making sure the surgeon and anesthesiologist were out of earshot. Mr. Walker, you didn't consent to this surgery. Your chart says you did, but I know you didn't. Someone signed for you. Someone who wants this to happen fast. My son, I croaked. Her eyes told me everything before she even spoke. Yes. For a moment, I couldn't feel my hands or my feet. Not from medication, no. The fear alone froze me solid. The kind of fear a man only learns when he's lived long enough to lose everything once already. When he knows the world can take more from him than he ever thought possible. Why, my voice died. My throat burned like I'd swallowed gravel. Why would he? Maria pressed a cool hand to my shoulder. You need to stay calm. If you panic, they'll think you're disoriented. That will give them an excuse to put you under faster. I tried lifting my hand. It barely moved. Such sedative. Low dose. Enough to weaken the body but not the brain. Ethan. My son. My only child. The same boy who used to fall asleep on my chest when he was 7, because the world felt too big, and I was the only safe place he knew. The same young man who'd cried on my shoulder when his mother died. The same kid I'd taught to drive in the Walmart parking lot on Sunday mornings. How could that boy become the man who signed off on a surgery meant to put me under and maybe never let me wake up? Maria leaned closer. I heard your son arguing with the doctor. He kept saying you were unstable and not fit to make decisions. He pushed for surgery tonight because his words, he might not be coherent tomorrow. My stomach dropped so fast I thought it might tear through the floor. Coherent. I was coherent now. Confused, yes. Drugged, maybe. But my mind was mine. I scanned the room. A surgical tray covered with gauze clamps, scalpels. The anesthesiologist checking something behind a blue curtain. A surgeon reviewing my chart, flipping the pages like he wasn't about to cut open a living man. What exactly does he want from me? I whispered. Maria swallowed hard. Mr. Walker, there are forms in your file. Asset transfer forms, a temporary healthcare proxy, a document stating you gave him permission to manage your personal property. And there's a note from a doctor you've never met, saying you're experiencing cognitive decline. My chest tightened. Not from the heart condition, from rage. From betrayal so sharp, it felt like a physical wound. I shook my head slowly. I never signed anything. I believe you, she said. But signatures can be forged. And when a man 60 tired goes to a clinic, he doesn't know. People make assumptions. They take advantage. I pulled against the straps on my wrists. They didn't budge. Maria's voice barely rose above a breath. If they put you fully under, I don't think you'll wake up. The heart monitor beeped faster, my body reacting even if my mind stayed ice cold. I forced my breathing slow. Calm. Calm meant survival. Help me, I said, barely audible. Please. She hesitated. Fear flickered across her face. Helping me meant risking her job, maybe her career. But then her jaw set, and something changed in her eyes. I will. Maria reached under the table and unbuckled the strap around my right hand. Piece it, efficient, terrified. She handed me a small blanket to cover my wrists so no one would see it was free. Then she said something that still echoes in my head. People underestimate older men. They think you're slow, that you're tired, that you won't fight back. Prove them wrong. She slipped a clipboard under the blanket on my lap. My chart, my name, a signature that wasn't mine. Ethan Walker. I whispered, staring at the scrawl. My own son did this. Maria nodded once. We need to get you out before the anesthesiologist comes back. Once they inject you, it's over. She steadied me as I swung my legs over the edge. My feet hit the cold floor. I nearly collapsed. Whatever they'd given me still clung to my muscles like fog. Hold on to me, she said. And I did. We moved toward the side door, slow, hunched, careful. Every step felt like walking through thick water. Each breath tasted of antiseptic and fear. Behind us, someone laughed. A deep male voice. The surgeon. He was probably joking with the anesthesiologist, but it sounded sinister from my side of the curtain. Maria's grip tightened. Just a few more steps. We reached the hallway, empty, dim, lined with medical carts and supply bins. She half dragged, half supported me as she led me toward a maintenance elevator. You're going to hide in the basement storage room, she said. I'll bring your belongings. Then we figure out what happened. But first we get you safe. I hadn't realized until that moment how far from safe I'd been for days, maybe longer. As the elevator doors closed, sealing me away from the operating room, from the table where I was supposed to die quietly, I finally felt everything hit me at once. The fear, the betrayal, the disbelief, the anger. My son wanted me dead. And for the first time in my life, I understood that surviving wasn't just an instinct. It was a decision. If you're still here listening to this story, tell me something in the comments. Have you ever felt pushed aside by your own family, like your thoughts didn't matter anymore because you hit a certain age? I want to know if I'm the only one who saw the warning signs too late, or if you've been there too. Because a week before that night in the operating room, everything started with something so small, so ordinary, that I didn't even recognize it as the first crack. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon. The sun slanted through the blinds in my living room, hitting the wooden floorboards I'd refinished with my own hands 10 years earlier. I'd been sorting old photographs, my wife, my son, the house, when we first bought it, just passing time, the way a man my age often does. Nothing dramatic, just memories, dust and silence. Then Ethan barged in. He never knocked anymore, just walked in, like the house belonged to him. Maybe in his mind it did. Dad, we need to talk. No hello, no smile. Just that tone the one kids use when they think they've become the parent. I still remember the way he looked at the mantel where I kept my wife's picture. He didn't even glance at it that day. Didn't acknowledge the woman who'd raised him, loved him, died too young. What now, I asked. The house, he said, like it was obvious. We talked about this. You don't need this big place anymore. It's too much for you. I'm fine, I said. I've lived here 32 years. That's exactly the problem, he snapped. You're stuck. You're 60, Dad. You need to simplify before something happens. before what I cut in. He didn't answer. Instead, he paced around like a realtor showing a property. His fingers traced the door frame, the walls, the kitchen counter. Not with affection, with calculation. "You could sell this place for a fortune right now," he said. "The market's hot. Lena knows investors who'd jump on it." I looked at him then. Really looked. The stiff jaw, the restless fingers, the eyes that wouldn't meet mine. I'd seen that look before on gamblers, on drowning men, reaching for anything to stay afloat. "Ethan," I said gently, "I'm not selling our home." "Our home?" he scoffed. "You mean your home?" Something sharp twisted in my chest. Not the heart, not yet, but something deeper. Something a father feels when he realizes his child sees him as an obstacle instead of a person. "I'm not moving," I said. He exhaled hard, shook his head, grabbed his coat. "You're being stubborn, Dad. And stubborn gets dangerous at your age." He left with a door slam that rattled the picture frames. That was the start. A dull ache spread across my chest. Not a heart attack, just stress. The kind of ache that comes when someone you love talks to you like you're fading away. That night, I fell asleep in the recliner. And when I woke up the next morning, something was wrong. I was tired, unnaturally tired, like I'd been awake for days. My head felt heavy, my eyelids thick. I blamed age, blamed stress, blamed anything except what I should have suspected. Ethan came by again that afternoon. "You don't look well," he said, setting his hand on my shoulder. "We should get you checked out." "I'm fine." "You're not." His voice softened, almost tender. "Dad, it's me. Let me help." And because he said it like that, because for a split second, I heard my son again, not the stranger he'd become, I agreed. But he didn't take me to Dr. Thompson, the man who'd treated me for 20 years. He didn't take me to urgent care either. He took me to a clinic I'd never seen before. A small building tucked behind a strip mall, the kind of place you drive past without noticing. The waiting room smelled like chemical lemon spray and burnt coffee. The receptionist didn't ask for my insurance or ID. She just glanced at Ethan and said, "He's here. Okay, room 3. Something about that felt rehearsed. The doctor was a man in his 40s, clean haircut, too clean smile. He listened to my chest for all of 10 seconds, asked me 3 questions, barely looked me in the eye. Then he handed Ethan a clipboard. "Have him sign these," he said. I remember holding the pen. I remember the paper blurring. I remember Ethan guiding my hand to the bottom line, like I was a toddler learning to write. "Just routine stuff," he said. "Don't think too hard." I should have stopped, should have said no. But my head felt dense, like thoughts were trapped inside cotton. I signed 3, maybe 4 sheets. The next few days were a haze. I'd wake up in the kitchen without remembering how I got there. I'd fall asleep sitting upright in a chair. I spilled coffee twice, not like me at all. I even missed my weekly phone call with my sister. That hadn't happened in 20 years. Memory holes, fatigue, disorientation. Not natural, not waging, not Mayfrey. I thought it was grief, stress, loneliness. But now I know better. Maria told me later, once she ran the lab results, that the dosage in my system wasn't consistent with anything a regular doctor would prescribe. Not enough to knock me out, just enough to fog the mind, enough to make me pliable, suggestible, enough to make me easier to push where Ethan wanted me to go. The part that haunts me most isn't the drugs. It isn't the forged papers. It's how quickly I doubted myself. That's what aging does in America. One bad night, one moment of weakness, one misplaced word, and suddenly, people think you're slipping, weak, in the way, ready to be managed. I started questioning my own senses, my own memories, my own worth. And that more than anything Ethan did terrified me. So when Maria met me in the basement storage room that night, after the attempted surgery holding her tablet, with my medical results, she said something simple. Mr. Walker, your tests don't match the surgery they planned for you. Your heart isn't failing. You didn't need an operation. I stared at her, unable to speak, because suddenly the whole week made sense. The fog, the pushing, the urgency, the signatures, the chest ache that had nothing to do with the heart and everything to do with betrayal. It all formed one clear truth. Someone had been preparing me, not for treatment, but for removal. And the person leading me straight into that trap was my own son. Back in that dim basement storage room, with flickering fluorescent lights and the smell of disinfectant, clinging to everything, Maria finally told me the truth she'd been holding back. She started talking fast, low voice, urgent, but every word steady, clear, like she'd rehearsed it in her mind a dozen times before deciding to risk everything to help me. Mr. Walker, she said, pulling a metal folding chair over so I could sit, I need you to understand something. None of this was an accident. I lowered myself into the chair, legs trembling. The sedative still gripped me like heavy ropes. But my mind, God, my mind was waking up. Tell me everything, I whispered. Maria nodded, clasped her hands, and exhaled slowly. I saw a young woman terrified not for herself, but for me. That alone told me I could trust her. Your son came in last night, she began. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't worried. He was determined. He told the staff that you'd signed a healthcare proxy, giving him temporary medical authority. I frowned. A proxy? I know, she said quickly. But the paperwork he brought looked official enough. It didn't have the usual notary stamp, but sometimes families sign emergency proxies when they don't have time for formalities. It's not unheard of. Convenient, I muttered. She swallowed. Your son insisted you were confused. Said you'd been wandering around at night. Said you were forgetting basic things. He kept repeating it to everyone over and over, like he wanted to train us to believe it. I closed my eyes. Not because I doubted her, but because I remembered Ethan's voice, exactly like she described it. Soft, rehearsed, manipulative. What reason did he give for immediate surgery? I asked. Maria hesitated. He said your heart was failing. I opened my eyes, but it wasn't. No, she said, shaking her head. Your tests show mild hypertension, common for your age, but nothing requiring emergency surgery. Nothing requiring any surgery. A cold shiver crawled down my spine. What about the doctor? I asked. The surgeon. Did he know? Maria lowered her gaze. He trusted the paperwork. And Lena. Hearing her name hit me like a slap. Lena, I said quietly. What did she do? Maria lifted her head again. She told us she was your primary emergency contact. She signed the forms confirming your symptoms. She also approved the surgery as family representative. I never listed her as anything, I said, voice tightening. I barely know the woman. You weren't the one who listed her, Maria replied. Ethan did. I leaned back, breath shaking. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was a blueprint unfolding in front of me. Maria continued, her voice steady. She said you were getting worse every day. That she and Ethan were trying to help you before you hurt yourself. The thing is, Maria paused, choosing her words carefully. She wasn't worried or emotional. She spoke about you like you were a problem to solve. I clenched my jaw. Yeah, that sounded like Lena. The more they talked, Maria said, the more wrong it felt. Then you arrived in pre-op, barely responsive. And Ethan told us you were always like that. Always like that. Like I was already gone. A ghost wearing my own skin. Maria shifted closer. I checked your vitals again. I checked your labs. None of it matched the story they were telling. And yes, I suspected you'd been given something. Nothing dangerous, but enough to confuse you. The sedation fog, the memory holes, the sleepiness. It all made sense now. So you came to me, I said softly. Maria nodded. But first I tried talking to the surgeon. I told him the numbers didn't fit. He waved me off. Told me to stay in my lane. That the family knows best. Family, I repeated bitterly. She reached into her scrub pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, my pre-op chart. Then a second sheet, Ethan's handwritten note about my decline. The handwriting, small, neat, precise. Too precise. Like he wanted it to look official. I couldn't let you go under, she said. Not with everything feeling so staged. Staged. A word I never wanted to hear associated with my own son. How did you get me out? I asked. Maria glanced at the elevator behind us and gave a faint, breathless laugh. Honestly, slowly. I unbuckled the wrist strap first. Then I waited for the anesthesiologist to step out to check another patient. Timing was luck. Or fate is. I don't know. She shrugged. I put a maintenance card in the hallway to block line of sight and guided you behind it. I pictured it. A quiet escape, not dramatic, just desperate. Two blurry figures moving through antiseptic light and narrow halls. It wasn't heroic, she said softly. It was just right. I studied her then, a young woman, maybe in her late 20s, hair tied back in a messy bun, shadows under her eyes from long shifts. Just someone trying to do the right thing in a world where that often goes unnoticed. You saved my life, I said. No, she whispered. You saved your own. I just refused to help them take it from you. Opulence settled between us. Not heavy, not awkward. Just real, two people sitting in a cold basement, bound together by something neither of us asked for. Finally, I said, Maria, what made you trust me? You could have believed Ethan. She met my eyes with something fierce and unwavering. Because you looked scared, she said. Not convinced, not sorry. Just scared. And I've worked with enough older patients to know the difference. Her voice softened. People think aging means losing your voice, your choices, your clarity. But I saw you fighting inside that sedation. That's not a man slipping away. That's a man being washed. Her words hit me harder than anything Ethan had done, because for the first time, someone saw me. Not as an old man, not as a burden, not as a box to check, but as a human being. Maria stood brushing dust from her scrubs. We need to move, she said. They'll notice you're missing soon. She offered her hand. I took it. For a brief moment, young and old, two strangers became allies. And the fight for my life truly began. Maria got me out through a staff exit near the loading dock. Just a steel door, no windows, the kind of place nobody notices unless they work there. She pressed her badge to the reader, and when it flashed green, she whispered, Go. Now. Don't look back. I wanted to thank her again, but the words wouldn't come. My throat was tight. My legs were heavy. My breath too loud in my own ears. So I just nodded, pushed the door open, and stepped out into the night. A cool drizzle greeted me, soft at first, then heavier as I limped down the ramp. The asphalt shimmered with thin reflections of streetlights, making the whole parking lot look like a broken mirror. Cars were scattered like sleeping animals, but none of them were mine. My truck, my old Ford, wasn't there. Ethan had driven me to the clinic days earlier. I hadn't realized how deeply I'd walked into the trap. The sky was low and gray, the kind of sky that presses down on a man's shoulders and makes him feel smaller than he already does. And at 60, you already feel the world shrinking sometimes. Your circle, your energy, Your twist. I pulled the hood of the hospital coat tighter around me. I hadn't even changed out of the flimsy gown under it. I must have looked like a ghost wandering out of some forgotten ward. For a moment I considered going home. Then the thought hit me like a punch. Home wasn't home anymore. It was enemy territory. The house I'd lived in for half my life. The house I'd built. Memories in the house I'd loved my wife in. Now it was part of the same maze Ethan had used to corner me. The realization hollowed me out in a way I wasn't prepared for. I stopped under a flickering street lamp, water dripping off my chin. What if someone was waiting for me at the house? What if they'd changed the locks? What if Ethan expected me to crawl back there? Confused, tired, easier to manipulate. I couldn't risk it. A pickup drove by, slowly, headlights washing over me. And for a second, I thought the driver might pull over to ask if I was okay. But he didn't. He just glanced, frowned, and kept to us. That's America at night. Everyone assuming someone else will deal with the problem. I stood there soaked, shaking, unsure where to go next. Then a name surfaced in my mind. Caleb. Old Caleb from next door. The widowed Vietnam vet who still mowed his lawn every Saturday morning, even if it took him 3 times as long as it used to. The kind of man who watched the neighborhood like it was still 1978, quiet, vigilant, and stubborn as hell. He'd understand. He'd listen. He'd believe me. I pulled the hospital coat tight around my chest and started walking. My legs were unsteady, my muscles still rubbery from whatever they'd pumped into me, but the air felt cleaner with every block I passed. The light rain turned into mist. Houses blurred behind watery street lamps. Porch lights glowed like little islands of warmth I couldn't reach. The whole world felt distant, cold, unfamiliar. When I finally reached Caleb's street, I stopped at the curb, breathing hard. His house stood dark, except for the porch light he always left on a habit from when his wife was alive, he once told me. A man keeps the light on for the person he loves, even if they're gone. I climbed the steps and knocked. At first, nothing. Then the sound of slow footsteps. The door unlocked. It cracked open just enough for one sharp gray eye to peer through. Sean Caleb's voice scratched like gravel. Jesus Christ, son, what happened to you? He opened the door wider, and I stepped inside, dripping onto his hardwood floor. Caleb looked me over, hospital coat, hospital bracelet, bare feet, trembling hands. You look like you crawled out of a morgue. Almost did, I muttered. He didn't ask permission. He just guided me to the living room, grabbed an old wool blanket from the couch, and wrapped it around my shoulders, like I was his own brother. The gesture hit harder than the cold ever could. What the hell happened? He said, settling into the recliner across from me. I exhaled. Ethan happened. Caleb stiffened. He'd always been polite about Ethan, but never warm. Tell me. So I did. Not everything. Not yet. But enough for him to sit back, rub his jaw, and curse softly under his breath. When did you last see him? Caleb asked. A few days ago, I said. But it's all blurred. Caleb grunted. Because he drugged you. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Caleb leaned forward. Sean, something's been off with Ethan for weeks. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure, but he hesitated. 2 weeks ago, I saw him hauling your boxes out of the garage. Big ones. Like he was moving things. He had a rented trailer. My stomach twisted. What I figured you two were reorganizing. Or planning something. But he kept loading things even when it got dark. Like he didn't want anyone noticing. A long silence rolled over us. Caleb sighed. And I wasn't gonna pry. Not my place. But now, Sean, everything about this stinks. I nodded slowly. I'm starting to see that. He sat back, eyes hardening. If Ethan sold your house without a legal title or proper authorization, That's not just wrong, that's illegal as hell. You know that, right? I know, I said quietly. You didn't sign anything real, not sober, I didn't. Caleb's jaw clenched. Then he's in deep trouble. And so are you, if you don't move smart. I swallowed. For the first time since leaving the hospital, I felt something close to solid ground beneath my feet. Caleb wasn't just giving me a couch to sit on. He was giving me a lifeline, a place to start the fight back. Stay here tonight, he said. Tomorrow we figure out what's been done to you. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, I let myself breathe. Because even though the night outside was cold, wet, and merciless, I wasn't alone anymore. And I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Caleb insisted we wait until dawn before going back. You need your strength, he said, handing me a mug of black coffee the next morning. I barely tasted it. My mind was running ahead of me, crashing into memories, into fears, into a cold realization that I might not like what we were about to find. Maria arrived at Caleb's place just after sunrise, her hair damp from the morning fog, eyes red, from no sleep. She'd snuck out during her break. I only have a little time, she said breathlessly, but I need to be here for this. I couldn't thank her. Words felt too small. The three of us, an old man, an older veteran, and a young nurse, got into Caleb's truck and drove toward the place I'd lived half my life. The road was eerily quiet, like the world knew something was wrong and didn't want to watch. When we turned onto my street, my stomach twisted. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. The grass was too short, freshly cut. The porch light I always left on was dirty, and the curtains were gone. Someone had wiped away the signs of my life. Caleb parked at the curb. No one spoke. Even the morning birds seemed to avoid the yard. I stepped out before my legs could decide not to, and the air hit me like cold truth. We walked to the front door. Automatically, I reached for the handle. It didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. A new lock. Clean. Shiny. Installed recently. Caleb muttered. Son of a Maria. Stepped up beside me. Sean, I'm sorry. I didn't answer. My palm rested on the doorknob a long moment, feeling nothing but smooth metal. No warmth. No welcome. Just a boundary between me and the life I'd built. Let's look around, Caleb said gently. We circled the house. Every window was bare. No blinds, no curtains, no furniture inside. The garage door had a faint scratch from where someone had pried it open recently. When Caleb brushed his fingers over the mark, he shook his head. I saw Ethan and Lena hauling boxes out of here 2 weeks ago, he said quietly. I didn't want to believe he'd do all this. Neither did I. We reached the back porch, my porch, where my wife Maggie and I used to drink tea on summer nights, where Ethan played with his model rockets when he was little, where I sat after Maggie died, staring into the dark yard, trying to feel her hand in mine. Now it felt like a stranger's porch. Maria cleared her throat. Sean, I think you should see this. She'd pulled up a website on her phone, the county property records portal. It was public information, but I'd never bothered with it. Never imagined I'd need to. Type your address, she said. My fingers shook, but I typed. The result appeared in seconds. Owner North Star Rivers LLC, recorded 3 weeks ago. Authorized signatory Lena Hart. My breath left me in a single harsh exhale. Lena. Of course it was. Maria scrolled. The sale price is well below market value. Caleb leaned over her shoulder. That's a cash flip number. Someone wanted this fast. And there's your signature, Maria whispered. She tapped the screen. My name appeared in black ink, except the W in Walker curved wrong, and the S in Sean slanted differently. It wasn't mine, not even close. I felt my knees weaken. Caleb steadied me with a hand on my back. That's forged, he said firmly. No question. Maria nodded. This shouldn't have gone through without verification. Something's off. The problem wasn't just the forged signature. It was what the forgery meant. It meant Ethan had planned this long before the hospital. It meant the chest pains hadn't been random. Someone nudged me into that clinic. It meant while I was drugged and foggy, Ethan and Lena were emptying my life box by box. I walked to the back door, my back door, and placed my hand against the frame. The wood felt colder than I remembered, rougher, like the years had been stripped from it. That was when the memories poured in, without warning. Maggie standing on that spot barefoot, laughing, while flour dusted her hair. Little Ethan running through the doorway, with a plastic dinosaur in his hand. Me, leaning on that frame one evening after work, watching my family cook dinner inside. All gone. All erased. The weight of it pressed so hard into my chest I had to close my eyes. Sean, Maria said softly. You okay? No, I whispered. No, I'm not. There's a special kind of pain that comes from losing something you thought was safe forever. Not just a building, not wood and nails, but the story of your life. You're not losing it, Caleb said, voice rough, but steady. It's been taken. And that's different. I opened my eyes and looked at him. He wasn't asking for anything. He wasn't judging. Just standing beside me, like a man who knew what loss looked like, because he'd lived it too. What do we do now? Maria asked. Caleb answered before I could. We fight smart, not wild. Then he looked at me. All you need to know right now is this. If your son sold this house without proper authority, it's illegal. Flat out wrong. No judge in this country would let that slide. Maria nodded. And the forged signature? That's not paperwork confusion. That's intent. The rain started again, soft first, then building. Droplets pattered on the empty porch, carrying dust down the siding like tears. I stood there staring at the home that no longer recognized me, and something inside shifted. Not broken, shifted. Like a man standing up after being pushed down too long. This was Maggie's house, I whispered. This was Ethan's childhood. This was my life. Maria placed a hand on my arm, gentle, steady. It's still yours, Sean, she said. They just don't know it yet. Her words didn't heal the wound, but they gave it purpose. And that was enough to take the next step. We went back to Caleb's house after standing outside my own empty home. My clothes were still damp from the rain, but the fog in my mind that was finally lifting. For the first time in days, I didn't feel lost. I felt angry. And anger, when it's clean and deserved, can wake a man up better than any medicine. Maria spread a pile of papers across Caleb's kitchen table. It was old wood, scratched warm, exact opposite of the sterile hospital surfaces I had nearly died on. These are copies, she said, tapping the stack. I didn't take the originals. I'm not trying to get fired. I gave her a tired smile. You've already done more than anyone else. She didn't smile back. She looked too worried. Caleb poured coffee into 3 mismatched mugs. He set one in front of me and one in front of Maria, then stood with his arms crossed. Let's hear it. Maria sorted the papers into 3 small piles. These are your vitals from last week. These are medication logs. And these are notes from the doctor who cleared you for surgery. I picked up the vitals first. Your heart rate was normal, Maria said, leaning over my shoulder. Blood pressure slightly high, but nothing unusual for someone who's partway into their 60s. I nodded. I'd heard that from my regular doctor for years. And here, she continued, pulling another page forward, are the sedative levels. I stared at the numbers. I couldn't interpret them, but she could. Mr. Walker, you were given mild benzodiazepines for at least 3 days before the surgery. 3 days. Everything inside me stilled. That's why you couldn't stay awake, she said gently. Why your memory felt patchy. You weren't forgetful. You weren't declining. You were chemically kept under. Caleb muttered a curse under his breath. Your own kid drugged you. Maria didn't confirm it outright, but her silence was confirmation enough. He told the staff you'd been slipping mentally for months, she whispered. But your labs didn't match that at all. That's why I started digging. I swallowed hard. What about the physician who approved the surgery? Maria pulled the third pile closer. He barely examined you. And the notes? She tapped them with a finger. They're inconsistent. He wrote that you were non-responsive during the evaluation, but your reflex tests were marked normal. Caleb snorted. Can't be both. Exactly, Maria said. I reached for the coffee, but my hand shook. It wasn't fear now. It was something else. Something wisting. A kind of quiet strength I thought I'd lost when Ethan started talking to me like I was a burden. Then Caleb snapped his fingers as if a memory hit him like lightning. Sean, he said, remember 4, maybe 5 weeks ago, Ethan came by and asked if he could take some of your paperwork. Said he needed it to update insurance info. You showed him where the file drawer was. I stared at him. I did remember. It seemed harmless at the time, a kid helping his dad navigate the headache of insurance documents. What did he take? I asked slowly. Caleb shrugged. Looked like tax forms. Old records. Maybe copies of your signature. My heart sank. My old signature, the one I used before my hand injury years ago, was stored in those folders. Anyone could copy it if they wanted. And Ethan had wanted. For weeks. Maybe months. Jesus, I whispered. Caleb placed a hand on my shoulder. Just a weight, a grounding presence. We're gonna fix this, Sean. But we gotta be smart. Maria nodded quickly. You need a lawyer. Someone who knows elder financial abuse inside and out. The phrase stung. Elder. Financial abuse. Me. The man who once built aircraft prototypes with my bare hands. The man who raised a boy alone after Maggie died. The man who survived things most people don't even imagine. Being reduced to that label. It made my jaw clench hard. Do you know someone? Caleb asked. Maria hesitated. There's a woman at the hospital. Her mom went through something similar. She mentioned a lawyer once, Martha Green. Works mostly with older clients. She's tough. That was all I needed. 2 hours later, Caleb drove me to a small law office, squeezed between a laundromat and a barber shop. Nothing fancy. No glass doors or marble floors. The kind of place that said, we handle real problems, not corporate nonsense. Martha Green was in her late 50s, silver hair pulled into a low bun, glasses hanging from a chain. But her eyes sharp, awake, and tired, in that way only people who've seen too much injustice can be. She listened to everything. Quietly. No interruptions. Just taking notes and watching me. Like she was measuring the strength of my voice. When I finished, she exhaled long and slow. Mr. Walker, she said, what happened to you is wrong, deeply wrong. But you're not powerless. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until she said that. Let me explain a few things, she continued. Simple. Clear. She lifted one finger. A temporary health care proxy, the one your son used, gives him authority over immediate medical decisions if you're unconscious or unable to decide. But it does not give him the right to sell your home, transfer funds, or sign contracts. That's a completely different legal process. Second finger. Doctors cannot perform surgery, especially heart surgery, unless the patient is either unconscious due to a true medical emergency or fully able to consent. You were neither. That alone raises huge red flags. Third finger. And forged signatures, they crumble the moment we put them under scrutiny. Handwriting analysis, witness credibility. The timeline, it all collapses, he says. She leaned back, eyes never leaving mine. Sean, your son overplayed his hand. I didn't realize tears had gathered until I blinked them away. Not because I was weak, but because I finally felt something I hadn't felt since Ethan first started pushing me around. Dignity. And something even rarer, hope. I'll take your case, Martha said plainly. But I want you to hear this first. You are not just a victim. You're a witness, a fighter, and an essential part of your own defense. If you weren't lucid, if you weren't strong, we wouldn't have a chance. But you are. My hands tightened into fists, not in anger, but resolve. Caleb grinned. Told you, kid. 60 ain't dead. Maria wiped the corner of her eye, pretending it was dust. And to me, I felt taller than I had in months. Like someone had handed me back the pieces of myself Ethan tried to take away. For the first time, I wasn't confused. I wasn't cornered. I wasn't being dragged through the dark. I was walking out of it. And the truth, my truth, was finally on my side. We were all sitting around Caleb's small kitchen table. Me, Maria, and Caleb, while Martha Green prepared a short list of steps for the next morning. She talked calmly, like a woman who'd navigated storms bigger than mine. But my mind wasn't on the legal plan. My mind was stuck on Ethan, on what I'd say to him when the moment finally came. I didn't have to wait long. My phone, Maria had retrieved it from the hospital for me, vibrated on the table. Ethan. The name alone made my stomach clench. Martha lifted a hand. Answer it, she said quietly. Put it on speaker. I'll record from my end. No fancy equipment. Just her cell phone placed face down on the table. I took a breath and tapped the screen. Dad, Ethan's voice came out too quickly. Too bright. Too rehearsed. Dad. Thank God. Where are you? The hospital said you left against medical advice. His words were coated in worry, but underneath them, I heard fear. And not the kind a son feels when a father's health is at risk. This was the fear of a man who realized his plan was unraveling. I'm fine, I said. Alive, awake, clear-headed. A pause. Just 2 seconds, but enough to tell me he hadn't expected that. Well, good, Ethan said. But you shouldn't be out on your own. You're not in the right state to what I cut in. To think, to decide for myself, to stay alive. The silence on his end sharpened. Dad, what's going on? He asked, this time softer. You sound upset. Let me make this simple, I said. Why is my house sold? Caleb leaned back. Maria froze. Martha lifted her eyes from her notes. Ethan inhaled sharply. What? What are you talking about? Your house, Dad. You asked me to handle the sale. We talked about this. You signed the papers. I didn't, I said flatly. Try again. He laughed, nervous, shaky. The kind of laugh a man uses when he's desperately rearranging excuses in his head. Dad, you're confused. You haven't been yourself lately. You insisted on downsizing. You said the house was too much. That was never said, I replied. Not once. Dad, Ethan, I said, dropping my voice. Stop lying for 5 seconds and answer me. Why is the title under an LLC? And why is Lena listed as the managing member? Everything went still, the kind of still that told me the lie had snapped clean in half. Then I heard her. Lena's voice, sharp, polished. Too smooth to be honest. Sean, she said, it's Lena. Honey, listen to me. Let's not make this harder than it already is. I felt something hot sting behind my eyes. Not tears, not anger. Something older, something deeper. This conversation is between me and my son, I said. No, she replied, it's between all of us. Because Ethan has been trying to take care of you, and you're being unfair. Maria whispered under her breath. Unbelievable. Caleb muttered something stronger. But I kept my eyes on the phone on the bridge between me and the boy I once believed I'd raised well. Ethan, I said, calm as still water. Did you take my paperwork from the file cabinet? Did you use my old signature to fake consent forms? He didn't answer, but his breathing changed. Faster, uneven. Lena said instead, voice dipped in false sympathy. You're making serious accusations, and you're not well. You need rest, medication, guidance. There it is, Caleb whispered. The script. Martha motioned for silence. She leaned closer to the phone. The recorder on her own device blinked red. Lena continued, I know it's scary, but you're not stable. Ethan told me how you've been forgetting things, getting lost. Leaving the stove on, Lena, I said slowly. I haven't forgotten a damn thing. Her tone sharpened. That's not what the doctor said. Your doctor, I corrected. Silence again. Only breathing. Dad. Ethan finally said, voice cracking the tiniest bit. You're blowing this out of proportion. I was helping. You needed help. You weren't thinking straight. And so your solution, I said, was to drug me. Ethan exhaled sharply. Dad, stop. You're imagining things. Am I asked. Because the lab results say otherwise. Maria flinched. Martha nodded to herself like she'd just received confirmation of a theory. Dad, Ethan said again. Come home. Please, we can talk. Just you and me. You sold my home, I said quietly. It was for your good, he insisted. You don't need that place anymore. That place, I repeated. You mean the home where your mother died, where you grew up, where I kept every birthday card you ever made. That place. He hesitated too long. Lena cut in. Voice icy now. Sean, this is ridiculous. You should let Ethan take charge. The judge is going to agree with him anyway. The judge, I said. What judge? No answer. But I knew then that they were planning something bigger, something uglier, something that needed me out of the way entirely. It's over, I said finally. Whatever you thought you'd get out of this, it's done. Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. Dad, don't do this. I didn't do this, I replied. You did. I was trying to help, he insisted, voice rising. You're getting old. You're slipping. Someone had to step up. Then you should have stepped toward me, I said, not over me. The line fell into a silence so heavy it felt like weight on my chest. Then Lena spoke low and venomous. This isn't going to end the way you think, Sean. We're not afraid of a little noise. You're confused and everyone will see that. I stared at the phone like I was looking at a snake. Good, I said. Let them see. And I hung up. Martha reached over and rested her palm on mine. You did well, she said. We got enough. Maria nodded. More than enough. Caleb poured me another cup of coffee and squeezed my shoulder. But me, I just sat there, quiet, still, heartbroken. Because the truth wasn't just that Ethan had betrayed me. It was that he'd fallen so far. I couldn't even see the son I raised anymore. The courthouse wasn't grand, just a squat brick building, with scuffed floors, buzzing lights, and the faint smell of old paper. But the moment I stepped inside, it felt like the center of the universe. This was where I would either reclaim my life or watch it slip completely out of my hands. Martha walked beside me, calm, crisp suit, legal pad in hand. Maria had taken time off her shift and stood on my other side, her presence a quiet anchor. Caleb trailed behind us, muttering a steady stream of encouragement that was half prayer, half marine vocabulary. We entered a small courtroom, not a jury room, just a judge, a clerk, and two tables facing forward. Simple, direct, no theatrics. Ethan sat at the opposite table. He looked tired. Good suit, but rumpled. Hair combed, but trembling hands gave him away. Lena sat next to him, poised like she was attending a business meeting, not a hearing about the man she nearly watched die. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a voice that cut through air like a clean blade, adjusted her glasses. "Case of Walker versus Walker," she announced, "regarding temporary medical authority and potential elder harm." My heart hammered once hard. Then it began. Ethan rose first when the judge gestured. "Your Honor," he began, voice carefully gentle. "My father is not well. He hasn't been taking care of himself. He's been confused, forgetful, and, frankly, unstable." He glanced at me, as if expecting me to slump over and prove his point. I didn't. I sat upright, shoulders square, eyes forward. "For months now," Ethan continued, "I've tried to intervene. I only sought temporary medical authority to protect him. I arranged surgery because his doctor told me his heart was in danger." "Which doctor?" the judge asked. Ethan hesitated. "A specialist. A name." He glanced at Lena. She looked down at her hands. Martha's eyebrows lifted just slightly, the victory already forming. The judge nodded briskly. "Continue. My father doesn't fully understand the choices he's making," Ethan said, his voice pushing toward desperation now. "He's been imagining things. He thinks we're stealing from him." "Are you?" the judge asked plainly. Ethan's mouth opened and closed. "No, absolutely not." But doubt flickered in his eyes. And the judge saw it. Everyone saw it. "Your Honor," Martha said, standing, "we would like to present our evidence." "Proceed." Her voice remained calm, not dramatic, not angry, not accusatory. Just steady. The kind of steady that cuts deeper than shouting. "First," she said, "a short cognitive evaluation performed yesterday. One designed for simplicity and reliability." She handed the papers to the judge. "He scored perfectly," she said. "There is zero indication of cognitive decline." The judge scanned the sheet, nodding. "Noted." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Second," Martha continued, "Nurse Maria Santos would like to testify." Maria stepped forward, hands stiff at her sides, but her voice unwavering. She told them everything, how Ethan insisted on immediate surgery, how he brought in a vague healthcare proxy, how Lena signed herself as family representative, how the doctor barely examined me, and how I was strapped into a pre-op bed, despite normal vitals. And most importantly, Maria said Mr. Walker was conscious-oriented and aware. He was sedated, light sedation, but not confused. The surgery had no medical basis. The judge leaned forward. "You're certain?" "Yes, Your Honor. I wouldn't be here otherwise." Lena shifted in her seat, one foot tapping nervously. Next came Caleb. He walked slowly, his limp from old injuries, more obvious in the quiet room, but his voice carried strength. "I'm Sean's neighbor," he said. "I see him nearly every day. He cooks, he drives, he pays bills on time. Hell, he helped me repair my fence 2 months ago. That's not a mound slipping anywhere." He shot Ethan a look that could have cut steel. "And for the record," Caleb added, "I saw Ethan emptying his garage weeks before this supposed medical emergency. Which tells me this wasn't sudden. It was planned." The room fell dead silent. Even the judge seemed to pause. Finally, Martha presented the last set of documents. The medication logs Maria had saved. "These show a repeated administration of mild sedatives," she explained. "None prescribed by Mr. Walker's regular physician, none medically justified, and all administered within the time frame of the alleged mental decline." The judge studied the pages for a long moment. "Mr. Walker," she said at last, turning to me, "do you have anything to add?" I rose slowly. For the first time in days, my voice didn't shake. "I raised my son alone," I began quietly. "I gave him everything I had. I thought love guaranteed loyalty. I thought he saw me as a person, not a burden." My throat tightened, but I kept going. "I'm not confused. I'm not slipping. I'm not gone. I'm still here. And I deserve the right to stand in my own life. The judge didn't smile, but something softened in her eyes. Thank you, Mr. Walker. The judge folded her hands. After reviewing the testimony and documents presented, it is my ruling that all temporary medical and financial authority granted to Mr. Ethan Walker is immediately revoked. Ethan's head dropped. The judge continued, furthermore, given the credible claims of potential financial misconduct, forged documents, and unauthorized medical orders, I am issuing a temporary protective order in favor of Mr. Sean Walker. Ethan Walker is prohibited from accessing any of his father's accounts, property, or medical decisions, pending further investigation. She struck her gavel once. Final, firm, absolute. I felt something rise inside me, quiet, but powerful. Not triumph, not vengeance, just oxygen. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe fully. Martha leaned toward me. You did this, she whispered. Maria squeezed my arm. Caleb grinned and nodded once, like a soldier acknowledging another. But the moment that stayed with me was this. When I walked out of that courtroom, my back was straight. My steps were steady. I wasn't hiding anymore. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen, heard, and alive. The hearing changed everything. For me, it brought air back into my lungs. For Ethan, it stripped away the shield he'd been hiding behind. Within a week, his world began to crack. Lena was the first to go. I heard about it from Caleb, who overheard them arguing in the driveway of Ethan's rented townhouse. She wasn't yelling. Lena was too controlled for that. But her tone was sharp enough to cut through the afternoon air. You said this would be clean, she snapped. You said he'd sign everything. You said he'd be out of the way by now. Ethan mumbled something. Lena scoffed. I'm not going down with you. I never should have trusted you to handle this. And then her heels clicked across the pavement as she walked away, straight to a waiting car with tinted windows. She didn't look back. It took Ethan nearly a full minute before he sat down on the curb and put his head in his hands. The lie had started with Lena, but Ethan had fed it. He'd watered it. He'd climbed into it willingly. And now he was choking on it. 2 days later, Martha called me. Ethan requested to meet you, she said. In a public place, with witnesses. It's allowed. Why, I asked. Because everything he built his story on is collapsing, she said. And he knows you're the only person left who might show him mercy. Mercy, funny how heavy that word becomes when applied to your own child. Still, I agreed. Because some conversations, no matter how painful, have to be had face to face. We met at a small cafe on Maple Street. Neutral ground. Middle of the day. Families eating pancakes. College students with laptops. A couple of retirees arguing about baseball. Just normal life. Ethan sat in a corner booth. Shoulders hunched. Dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw me, he stood, then sat back down like he didn't know how to greet me anymore. Dad, he said quietly. I slid into the seat across from him. Ethan. We sat in silence for a while. The server brought water. We didn't touch it. Then Ethan spoke. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I exhaled slowly. But you meant for it to start. His face crumpled, not dramatically, just a small painful fold around his eyes. I was drowning, Dad. I had debt. More than I told you. And Lena, she knew people. She made it sound easy. Clean. Said lots of families do this, transfer assets for protection. Protection from what, I asked. He swallowed. From you losing control. There it was again, the excuse wrapped in concern. The lie disguised as love. You could have talked to me, I said softly. You could have told me about the debt, about your worries. I'm your father. He shook his head. I didn't want you to think I'd messed up. I wanted to look strong, responsible. Lena said if I handled things right, if I showed you I could take charge, you'd finally respect me. Those words hit hard. Harder than I expected. Ethan, I said calmly, I've always respected you. But respect isn't given to lies. He covered his face with both hands. When he spoke, his voice cracked. I didn't think you'd fight, he whispered. I really didn't. I thought you were tired. I thought you'd just let it happen. I stared at him a long moment. It's a strange thing to realize your own child underestimated your strength more than strangers did. That he looked at you and saw weakness instead of history, instead of backflowing, instead of decades of surviving things he never knew. I raised a son, I said quietly. I didn't raise a monster. But Ethan, I let the silence fill the space between us, the kind that carries the weight of years. I can't save you from yourself. He let out a broken sound, not quite a sob, not quite a breath. Dad, he whispered, they're saying I could face charges. You will, I said. Not cruel, just honest. You have to answer for what you did. I was manipulated, he insisted, shaking his head. Lena pushed me. She told me what to say, what to file, what to sign. And you chose to follow her, I said, even when your gut told you it was wrong. He didn't argue. That was how I knew he finally understood. We sat there for a long time. Two men with the same eyes and the same blood, but very different shadows. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to forgive him. I wanted to rewind time to when he was 7 and holding my hand crossing the street. But I couldn't bridge the gap for him. He had to walk it. And he wasn't ready to. Eventually, Ethan wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I'm sorry, he said again. I know that doesn't fix anything. No, I agreed it doesn't. But I added, softening, just a little. It means you're still human. He looked up at me, startled by the mercy still left in my voice. But mercy, I continued, doesn't erase consequences. He nodded slowly. I know. When we stood to leave, he reached out as though to hug me, then stopped halfway. His hand hovered near my arm, uncertain. I gave a small nod. Not acceptance, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. He placed his hand on my forearm for 2 seconds, then let go. It wasn't healing, but it was easy something. Afterward, Martha met me outside the cafe. How'd it go? She asked. It hurt, I said simply. She gave a tired smile. Most important truths do. He'll have to face charges, I said. Yes, she replied. But that's the judicial system's job now. Yours is to keep rebuilding your life. I looked up at the sky, gray, open, strangely peaceful. Funny, I said. Losing everything taught me what I still have. Which is, she asked. Myself. It wasn't triumph, wasn't vengeance, wasn't satisfaction. It was clarity. Sometimes the worst break is the one that finally lets the light in. It took weeks, meetings, signatures, a short session with the same judge who'd looked me dead in the eye and told me she believed me. But eventually, the papers came through. No drawn-out trial, no war of documents, just a decision based on truth and a simple negotiation that even the court clerk said was the cleanest resolution she'd seen in months. That's how I got my house back. When Caleb drove me there that morning, the sunlight hit the siding just right, the same way it used to when Maggie and I stood on the lawn, arguing about whether to plant boxwoods or hydrangeas. I felt her there somehow. Not in a sad way, in a steady one. Like the house had been quietly waiting for me. But when I opened the door, well, it was empty. Not unfurnished empty. Hollow. Bare floors. Bare walls. No kitchen table. No photos. The grooves in the hallway where Maggie's wheelchair once rolled, still there, but stripped of context. An empty house is a strange thing. It echoes your footsteps, your memories, your regrets. It doesn't judge you, but it doesn't comfort you either. Caleb whistled low. Looks like they gutted it. Yeah, I said quietly. They did. We stood like that for a minute, before Maria arrived still wearing her scrubs, hair tied back tight, carrying a box labeled, "Paint Supplies, Free" on the side. She stepped past me, looked around, and gave a single satisfied nod. "Good bones," she said. "We can work with this." I didn't know how badly I needed to hear that word until it left her mouth. We started small. Caleb had a garage full of extra lumber from a deck project he'd never finished. Maria found a thrift store that practically begged her to take home a mismatched dining set for $20. And me, I dug out my old toolbox from the trunk of Caleb's truck. He'd saved it without telling me, and held the hammer I'd used through most of my life. The first nail went into a loose floorboard near the entryway. Just a tap. Then another. Then the steady rhythm I'd known since I was 22 and too stubborn to hire a contractor. Tap, tap, tap. Funny how fixing a floorboard can feel like stitching a wound closed. Maria painted the living room a warm cream color she insisted would calm the trauma out of the walls. Caleb replaced a bent door hinge while swearing at whoever invented Phillips head screws. And there I was, on my knees with a hammer, sweat on my brow, 60 years old, rebuilding a life piece by piece. Not bitter, not broken, just rebuilding. A neighbor walked by and waved. Someone honked. A kid on a bike yelled, "Nice house, mister." And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own neighborhood. Around midday, Maria brought in sandwiches, and we sat on overturned paint buckets in the living room. "You know," she said between bites, "most people your age would have given up, gone somewhere quiet. Let someone else handle the mess." I smiled. "Most people my age know what's worth fighting for." Caleb nodded. "Damn right." I looked at my hands, veined rough, from years of work, and thought about everything they'd built, held, carried, and everything they almost lost. This house survived storms before I said. It survived again. But the truth was, it wasn't the house I was rebuilding. It was me. Over the next few days we kept at it. Maria picked out curtains that somehow made the living room look like it remembered joy. Caleb found an old rocker at a yard sale and repaired the leg. I refitted the door frame that had warped in the humidity. We weren't restoring the past. We were creating a new version of it. Something humbler, something cuter, something honest. A survivor's home. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I stood in the doorway with a fresh coat of varnish drying on the floorboards, and I realized this house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt open. Open to company. Open to life. Open to me. One afternoon, a letter arrived from Ethan. Short, shaky handwriting. Nothing like his usual neat accountant-style script. He didn't ask for forgiveness. Didn't blame Lena. Didn't ask for money. He simply wrote, "Dad, I know I can't undo what I did. I'm taking responsibility. I hope one day you'll talk to me again. I'm trying to fix myself. Ethan." I stood there with the letter in my hand and felt something loosen, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but the hard knot inside my chest finally breathing. "I hope you do fix yourself," I murmured, "but I can't carry you there." I didn't throw the letter away. I didn't answer it either. Some doors you keep closed for now. Not out of anger, out of self-respect. The next week, as Maria and Caleb argued good-naturedly about which thrift store had better deals, I stepped outside with my hammer again. There was one more loose plank on the porch I'd been meaning to fix. I knelt, set the nail, lifted the hammer, And I realized something simple but powerful. I wasn't rebuilding because of what Ethan took from me. I was rebuilding because of what I still had. Dignity, strength, friends, a home that remembered me even when my own son forgot who I was. The hammer came down. One solid hit. Clean, honest, right, and I smiled. At 60, I whispered to myself as the evening breeze rolled through the yard. I thought my life was winding down. I set another nail, another tap, another small resurrection. Turns out, it was just beginning again.